Hey, it's about 7:30 at night, um, and this is September 14th, 2012. You know what's really strange? The whole entire world recognizes that it's the year 2012. Why is that?
The most famous human being in all of history was a first-century Jewish revolutionary. His name was Jesus. Christians believe Jesus was crucified, died, and on the third day rose from the dead and ascended into heaven. But for 2,000 years, there have been those who've challenged the truth of this biblical story.
You don't need that, grandmother.
Alright, let's take that name or forget. Maurice or something. You are the Father.
And no one visited Jesus' grave. We have no idea where Jesus is buried because he's not there. No one went to visit him. It did not become a shrine. It did not become a holy place of worship, as is the custom with other dead religious leaders and famous people. If you wanted to see Jesus' body, you wouldn't go to the tomb. You would go spend some time with him, have a meal with him, listen to Bible teaching from him. And after 40 days, Jesus ascended back into heaven. And today he's alive and well, friends. He's ruling and reigning as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And he is God, Lord, Savior, Christ, and King. And his resurrection is his vindication. Who is Jesus Christ? He is the maker of heaven and earth. He is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. He is the Son of God. He is the God-man. He is our humble servant. He is the man of sorrows. He is the good shepherd. He is the Prince of Peace. He is the wonderful counselor. He is the Lion of the tribe of Judah. He is the dragon slayer. He is the sinless Savior. He is the resurrection and the life. He is the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. He is the sinner's friend. He is the great high priest. He is the King of Kings. He is the Lord of Lords. And he is the way, the truth, the life. No one comes to the Father but by him. His love is glorious. His love is marvelous. His love is generous. His love is graceless. His love is matchless. And his love is priceless. He came again as a humble servant. He's coming again as a King of Kings and a Lord of Lords to judge the living and the dead. And friends, this is the most important moment in your entire life. Jesus, while on the earth, asked this question: who do you say that I am? That is Jesus' question for you today. Who do you say that he is?
Seems like a question that's been around since the beginning of time is, why are we here on this planet? How do we get here? What are we doing here? And where are we going? We're mortal. We die. So it's a good question because we watch things die. I held a parakeet in my hand one time, and it was dying, and it died in my hands. And I had this major sense of emotion of loss. That was reality, and it causes one to think, about humanity. We are everything from barbarians to saints on this planet, To me, it seems. You see all the bloodshed, and then you see all the compassion on the other extreme. You see science pushing one direction towards saving humanity and destroying humanity, both directions. We keep expanding it and expanding our knowledge. But we still ask the same question. Why are we here? How do we get here? Where are we going? What's our destination? You know, the Bible is something that I look to. I know there's some people that look to other books and other saviors and other gods. We're still all men. Maybe this person over to my right looks to Allah, and this person over to my left looks to Buddha, and then me in the middle, I look to Jesus. And then there's someone on the opposite end of the spectrum who doesn't look to anyone. He's in denial. Or is he? Maybe I'm in denial. That's why we're all asking the question. And there's 1,001 answers. And we're all right. He's correct. He's correct. He's correct. And I'm correct. There's only one absolute truth. He has it. He has it. He has it. I have it. But yet we don't agree. So how can all of us have the absolute truth? Perhaps we all have some of the truth.
Okay.
me that, grandmother.
Alright. What's that guy's name? I forget. Maury something.
500 years before Christ, a young prince set out on a journey. He would travel through pain and suffering to reach nirvana, the everlasting bliss we all dream of.
Symbol of peace, symbol of compassion, symbol of non-violence.
He was the Buddha. He grew up in a palace surrounded by luxury. In his teens, his privilege afforded him every indulgence. But he gave all this up to gain ultimate wisdom. He would travel the darkest corridors of his mind to come face to face with the devil inside him. He founded the first world religion, followed today by over 400 million people. A religion where meditation is used to reach a state of complete peace and happiness.
Our own potential, our own effort to know the ultimate reality.
And the events of his life make up one of the greatest stories ever told, and the Buddha, the world's most enduring icon.
You don't need that, grandmother.
Alright. What's that guy's name? I forget. Maury something. You are the Father.
Won't you listen to reason? Will you open your eyes? It's a wonder what you'll find with an open mind. You may be surprised. Yeah, gotta get away from this illusion for the sake of the world. This delusion, it's gotta
everybody, welcome to the Atheist Experience. We're live. It is July 15th, 2012, 2 days after Friday the 13th, and 1 day after Saturday the 14th, and 3 days after Thursday the 13th.
And the day before the
and
day after tomorrow.
All equally important, I'm Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week is Don Baker. Welcome.
Good to be here.
We're in a good mood. This is a live call-in television program out of Austin, Texas. We'll have the number up for you shortly. The announcement stuff has kind of been sidelined, and we're going to go ahead and let Don get started on his talk. How are you, by the way?
I'm doing good. I went to a holy place, believe it or not.
Holy to you or me or
holy
somebody
to
else?
me. Well, it's as close as atheists have to a holy place. I went to a great science museum. I went to the American Museum of Natural Science in New York City, where the Hayden Planetarium is. I didn't see Neil deGrasse Tyson there, but took in a great planetarium show. Spent the whole day running around the museum. It was awesome. I had a wonderful time.
I went to the Secular Student Alliance Leadership Conference in Columbus, where I helped poison the minds of the current and future leaders of the secular movement.
Good for you. Good for you.
All in a day's work.
Okay. The devil must be very happy.
Yes.
You don't need that, grandmother.
Let's take that name or forget. Maureen or something. You are the father.
No, I'm not the father. I'm not at all. It doesn't even look like me. Besides that, I'm 106 years old.
He's correct. And I'm correct. There's only one absolute truth. He has it. He has it. He has it. I have it. But yet, we don't agree. So how can all of us have the absolute truth? Perhaps we all have some of the truth. Perhaps we know some of the things. We're different people, we're different entities, we have a different capacity, we have a different perception of life, we have different experiences, we live in different cultures, and we see things differently. It's true that he's alive, it's true that I'm alive, but yet we're different people, so how could that be? Anyways, not to get off at Never Never Land, I'm always in Never Never Land, it seems like. Actually, I'm a citizen of Never Never Land. I just don't pay any taxes there. But what I'm trying to explain, I think, is this concept of, just talk about Christianity for a minute, because that's my most familiar area, is all the different Christians that call for different things. They're all looking to Jesus, so we have something in common. But each one of us has a different point of view, it seems like. And the Bible is, to a Christian, is more than one layer. The first layer, of course, is Jesus. Let me put it this way. The first layer is that our Creator wants us to be happy, wants us to have life abundantly, wants us to prosper. Our Creator wants us to be productive, wants us to have peace. Our Creator wants us to be healthy. The Creator wants us to enjoy living and enjoy His creation. Just like an artist who paints a picture spends a long time, an artist spends a long time making a painting, and when he's all done, he looks at it and says, hey, that's a great painting. I love that painting. What's the first thing that artist wants to do? He wants to show it to somebody. Hey, look at this painting. What do you think? Check it out. Or maybe he'll just put it on a stand somewhere and then watch. And he'll watch for someone to come by and admire that painting. He gets a sense of enjoyment and fulfillment out of others looking at the painting that he made. It's the same thing with the Creator. He creates this whole entire physical realm, this universe, this moon and the stars and the earth and Saturn and Jupiter and everything and all the orbits and all the plants and animals and trees and fruits. And he wants someone to enjoy that, to admire it, to appreciate it. That's where he gets his enjoyment from. So of course he wants us to live that way, happily. That's one layer in the Bible.
Okay, this is a little plot of land we wanted to garden. And we wanted to take it all the way back into here first we got to get all this cleared out. Before we can get all that cleared out, you see all the garbage. Before you want to plant, you don't want all this garbage in here going in with your stuff. So, little by little, we got to get rid of this. We got to get rid of this garbage. And, like they say, like about a frog, that, it boils a little bit. And before it realizes it, it's all boiled up. So it might not be that, all this trash gets dumped on in a little bit. At once. You accumulate it over the years. The same way too, let's say this whole front yard, which is covered in trash, we just cleaned it out. You got rid of your obvious sins. Doesn't mean that you're completely abiding in the Spirit and completely believing the way Jesus Christ wants you to. I just got learned too that even though my walk might be a little bit better than
it's your boy Chris.
Hi everyone.
Stefan Molyneux.
Hi everyone. My name is Derek.
My name is John.
Jamison Brady.
It's Nate.
Lucas.
It's John Dennis.
I'm Ricky.
Willie Will.
My name is Trace Danette.
Hey, I'm Max.
Hey.
My name is Patrick Philpott.
Hans Lee Care.
Alexandra.
I'm Jamie.
Hi, Thomas.
My name is Brittany.
Jeff Moon.
I'm Jim Cat.
Hi, I'm Dave.
My name is Adam.
Nancy Joy.
My name is Justin Wood.
I'm Al Schlegel.
Eric Knowles.
John Jones.
Tara Woodruff.
Julie. Scott Nancy.
I'm Alexa.
I'm Shelby.
My name's John McCabe.
I'm from College Station, Texas.
Buffalo, New York.
Bloomington, Indiana.
South Carolina.
Whether it's black, white, Asian, Puerto Rican, Mexican.
I'm from Spain.
From Seattle, Washington.
From Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
I'm here in Korea.
And I'm from Houston, Texas.
New Hampshire.
San Diego.
The University of New Hampshire.
In Philly, went to the Philly.
From all across the country, the Midwest, the South.
New Jersey.
Here in Oslo, Norway.
From the Washington, D.C. area.
California.
Seattle.
From Georgia. Arkansas.
From Smallwood, New York.
The movement in Canada.
Portland, Georgia. San Francisco.
In Costa Rica, actually.
Boston, Massachusetts.
South Carolina.
Or maybe he'll just put it on a stand somewhere and then watch. And he'll watch for someone to come by and admire that painting. He gets a sense of enjoyment and fulfillment out of others looking at the painting that he made. It's the same thing with the Creator. He creates this whole entire physical realm, this universe, this moon and the stars and the earth and Saturn and Jupiter and everything and all the orbits and all the plants and animals and trees and fruits. And he wants someone to enjoy that, to admire it, to appreciate it. That's where he gets his enjoyment from. So of course he wants us to live that way, happily. That's one layer in the Bible, because it's deeper than that. The next layer in the Bible is that we're at war. And I don't mean that America is at war with Afghanistan. I mean, we have a spiritual war going on. A spiritual war meaning that there's someone who wants to overthrow the government of God. And they are spiritual beings, powerful spiritual beings. Therefore, we are in the middle of a war. We're basically what is being fought over. Actually, principalities is what the battle is about, and we are the target. We are the booty. We are the treasure to be taken. We are the painting. And that's the second layer. So it might seem contradictory, well, how come if he wants us to have peace, why doesn't he just bring peace? If he wants us to be happy, why does he allow death? If he's really a God of love, then how come these people are all getting shot up and there's pain and unhappiness? Because we're in the middle of a war, man. That's the second layer. War means that there are casualties. And we are the casualties. And some of the confusion comes in, whether it's be the guy who doesn't believe in God, or the Buddhist or the Muslim or the Christian. Sometimes what we overlook is that there's this war going on, and that we are not at war with each other. That won't accomplish anything. It won't accomplish anything. It's an additional war. If you and I start a war between each other, that's a different war. That's a war in the physical realm. Because the war that we're in the middle of is a spiritual war in the spiritual realm of which we are connected. The problem comes into being when we forget that. When we forget that, then we start blaming God or blaming another man or blaming this country or blaming that country or blaming ourselves. That's a weird layer, and nobody really spends too much time there. Realizing that we're all in it.
Columbus Delano was Franklin Delano Roosevelt's grandfather. In November 21, 1933, President Franklin Roosevelt wrote, "The real truth of the matter is, as you and I know, that a financial element in the large centers has owned the government ever since the days of Andrew Jackson." Abraham Lincoln's father was A.A. Springs, who was part of the Rothschild dynasty. Lincoln's half-brother worked for Louis Cass Pasteur in the Merovingian dynasty, which was the 13th Illuminati bloodline. Pasteur also owned Jekyll Island, which was where the Federal Reserve Bank was created. In the mid-1800s, Abraham Lincoln and the Whigs were trying desperately to keep Andrew Jackson from establishing a gold standard called the Independent Treasury System. Lincoln and his party fought to set up a central bank, making such public speeches as, "Under a gold and silver standard, all will suffer more or less, and very many will lose everything that renders life desirable." This statement resounds elements of scare tactics in this speech and other speeches on the matter given by Abraham Lincoln. They give no real evidence or explanation. In the early 1900s, after a failed attempt for Woodrow Wilson to set up what was called the League of Nations following World War I, Wilson and his advisor, Colonel House, set up the Institute of International Affairs. This institute had two branches, one set up in England called the Royal Institute of International Affairs, and the Council on Foreign Relations was incorporated as the American branch in New York on July 29, 1921. Founding members include Colonel House, J.P. Morgan, John D. Rockefeller, and a few others. A national income tax was declared unconstitutional in 1895 by the Supreme Court, but a constitutional amendment was proposed in Congress by Senator Nelson Aldrich. This makes much more sense when you notice that Nelson Aldrich was also known as being the authentic voice of J.P. Morgan and later married into the Rockefeller family. Today, 27 to 35% of American workers' pay is taxed, and this money goes to a central bank called the Federal Reserve, or the Fed. For those of you who are unaware of the Federal Reserve Bank and what it is capable of, it is a non-government-owned bank that provides the U.S. with all of its currency. They control the inflation rate by the amount of money in circulation. Yet the most amazing aspect of the central bank is the suspension of specie payments, in which the Fed can refuse to pay their obligations, yet taxpayers must pay their debts or go bankrupt. In other words, the suspension of specie payments is the central bank's right to breach a contract with no penalty whatsoever. In even simpler terms, it's called theft. How is it that the Fed is allowed to breach any contract they wish without penalty from the government? The answer is simple. The Federal Reserve Bank has power over the government instead of under it. Carroll Quigley, Bill Clinton's mentor while at Georgetown University, wrote of central banks, "They want nothing less than to create a world system of financial control in private hands, able to dominate the political system of each country and the economy of the world as a whole, controlled in a feudalist fashion by the central banks of the world acting in concert, by secret agreements arrived at in frequent private meetings and conferences." It is important to note that nearly all of the founders of the Federal Reserve Bank were involved in the conception of the Council on Foreign Relations. Since 1934, when the Fed was established, almost every United States Secretary of State, all Secretaries of War or Defense since Henry L. Stimson, almost every head of CIA since Allen Dulles, nearly all presidential candidates, Dwight D. Eisenhower, JFK, Richard Nixon, and Bill Clinton were members of the CFR. George Bush Sr. was actually the CFR director from 1977 to 1979. Understand that all of these high-ranking government positions were lobbied into place by the organizations set up by the international banking cartel. There are secret meetings held everywhere by many of the same members in the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderberg Group, the Club of Rome, the United Nations, and the two branches of the Institute of International Affairs. These groups make up what is known as the Round Table, developed by Cecil Rhodes. Other offshoots or preliminary groups are the Bohemian Group and Yale University's Skull and Bones organization, which we all know George W. Bush, George Bush Sr., and John Kerry were all a part of. Most every meeting by these groups are attended by the most powerful government officials, corporate leaders, media moguls, and royal families in the world. These meetings are held in secret and not a word of them reaches the mainstream media. How is it that so many powerful people can attend meetings alongside the mainstream media and not a mention of it makes it to the public? This all may start making more sense when you start understanding that common citizens aren't meant to know what is happening at the top. Is there any dispute that to gain power in our day and age, it takes strategy and intelligence rather than brute force? Logic will tell you that in any sport or game, to claim victory, you must keep your moves strategic and secret. Why would it be any different in global politics?
If I bring up chess master up here and ask him, what are the principles by which I can become a master of the game of chess, he'll say these four things. He'll say that you need a sense of patience. Now, if you don't have patience, don't even try to begin the game to learn it. He'll say you need a sense of timing. If you don't have a sense of timing, don't open the book. You have to have knowledge of your opponent, right? And then the fourth one that they'll tell you is that you need to have the willingness to make any and all sacrifices. Now, ladies and gentlemen, why are the dark side winning the game? It's because they've got infinite patience. They've been working on one thing for 50,000 years. I call that patience. They got a brilliant sense of timing because they know all about the astrology and the divination that we forgot, that our agricultural ancestors all knew about. Well, we're with the Julian calendar and we're not interested in any of that stuff anymore. We're slaves of the watch, but we don't know about the higher time to rule our own lives by. They have amazing knowledge of you, right? They have intense knowledge of us, their enemies. And the fourth one is the clincher, isn't it? Because they're willing to make any and all sacrifices when and wherever they need to do it.
That would break our treaty. You're a good guy. Why, you hate war. You wouldn't go back on your word.
Are you kidding?
George W. Bush is a direct descendant of Godfrey de Bouillon. The Bouillons were servants of Pope Gregory VII and led the European noblemen into the crusade in order to recapture Jerusalem from the Islamic faith. He became the first king of Jerusalem and Duke of Lower Lorraine, which was known as a major region for the bloodline linked to the Illuminati. Bush is closely related to every European monarch. He is the 13th cousin of Queen Elizabeth and Prince Charles. He also has kinship with every member of the British royal family, the House of Windsor. The House of Windsor is known for abandoning their German names after World War I due to criticism of the people. A lesser-known fact about the House of Windsor, however, is the heavy funding contribution to bring Adolf Hitler to power in the rise of World War II. The swastika is actually a symbol of the sun, referencing to the sun order of the occult. word Nazi is actually Nazi, one of the Anunnaki children of Mother Goddess Ninharsag in the Sumerian texts. And even the word Holocaust is actually Yiddish for burned sacrifice offering. Heinrich Himmler was the commander of the SS and one of the most powerful men in Nazi Germany. Himmler was a Seventh-ray occultist and was very influenced by the book Astara by George Lunds, who was an Austrian mystic. This occult book mapped out the plan for a cleansing of ethnicities and bringing about one race, and to revive the ancient tradition of the Knights Templar of the Middle Ages. The Knights Templar were a group largely killed off by the French monarchy. The remaining Templar created many Masonic orders and secret societies throughout Europe, from which the Illuminati is believed to have originated. It's important to note as well that the Bush family's ancestor, Godfrey de Bouillon, was a Holy Templar himself. To this day, every single United States president, with no exception, has a direct bloodline relation to British monarchs. And on December 20th, 1993, George Herbert Walker Bush was knighted by the Queen of England as a Knight Grand Cross of the Most Honorable Order of the Bath for his leadership in the Gulf War. Does it strike you as odd that our president, our leader, kneeled before the Queen of England in a ceremony that symbolizes allegiance? So what does this all mean? It simply means that throughout every major civilization, political power has remained in a select few bloodlines, and it is desperately held in the same manner today. It is openly admitted to the public that major leaders worldwide are part of secret fraternal orders or secret meetings. But what is not disclosed to the public is the purpose of these meetings. So let me spell this out for you. The major leaders from around the world are part of a united effort to remain in power forever. To do so, the people are lured into the trap of perpetual debt, making it impossible to be repaid by the people. So in turn, all property and assets will be repossessed by the debtor. For those of you who are unaware what it means when a government owns everything of yours, it's called socialism. All of this is part of an ultimate goal of the mystery religions. The mystery religion is the paganism we've been talking about all along, but the pagan religions known to the public today are nowhere near as involved as the mystery religion. It is much less confusing than you think. Try to imagine this practice as less of a religion and more of an ambition. The ambition is to reach enlightenment. There is no superhuman intelligence or fantasy involved in this. The gifts of God are very simple. Omnipresence. The power of one being or consciousness to be everywhere at once. Omniscience. The power of knowing everything that can be known. And omnipotence. To have unlimited power. We see all of this today. It cannot be denied. If you still don't believe that the mystery religion is present today, just look around you. There are literally thousands of statues and emblems of ancient religions on every political establishment. Even on military uniforms, these symbols are found everywhere, but not only in our country. The same emblems are found on every nation's military uniform. And why would this be? Because a life taken at a chosen time, place, and a specific manner, it becomes a sacrifice. And to further illustrate this point, on March 20th, 2003, President Bush launched a bombing of Baghdad at 5:50 Baghdad time. This lasted into March 21st. It was called shock and awe by the mainstream media, but according to the mystery religion, this date is known as the Eve of Ostara, more commonly known as the spring or vernal equinox. Occultists worship the goddess of the earth, Gaia, on this day. The Druids knew this date as the spring fertility rite, the day of feast. The war was promptly ended on May 1st, 2003. This date is known in the Druidic calendar as Beltane, or Walpurgis Night. It was named after Saint Walpurga, who was the pagan goddess of fertility. From March 20th to May 1st, the pagan ritual is to give blood to the earth and renew life to the goddess of fertility. What better time frame to declare a bloody war on the days of a ritual sacrifice and end it exactly when the pagan ritual ends? The parallels are uncanny. These are all facts written in many different sources around the world and are available to anyone to discover. Connecting the dots is up to you, but make your own decisions instead of settling for conclusions that others have put in place before you.
The right answers are what you decide are the right answers. Maybe everything I'm telling you is wrong. I mean, I can tell you what I think happens to be more or less right, but there isn't any reason why you should pay any attention to it.
Now you know why they're out to destroy you. Today there is so much confusion about what Christianity is, because everything I thought that was Christianity, I found out wasn't. If this continues, there will be an overthrow of all things. Yea, this change and overthrow is deliberately planned. There is nothing going on.
Qualities. It has nothing to do with man or woman. These are represented by the left and right brain, yin and yang, black and white, light and dark, and most every other duality. Both are vital to our spiritual and physical health. In ancient Egypt, the female was the rightful heir to the throne. The male she chose to marry became pharaoh. This depicted the goddess tradition that has been destroyed to make way for a patriarchal, male-dominated society we see enforced in every major denomination. In suppressing the feminine of every society and pushing the people to strictly left-brain thinking, the natural ability for humanity to feel earthly, cosmic, and personal energy became lost. Traditions that were passed on through shamans, witch doctors, magicians, psychics, and seers of all kind became outlawed and ridiculed and given a stigma of something out of a Hollywood movie. Every religion explains that we are children of God and have godliness inside of us. If you erase the anthropomorphized God and understand that God is nothing more than the spiritual web that connects all things, all religious scriptures begin to make much more sense. Our bodies are merely vessels to contain our spirit, to gather experience for the divine mind. This is how evolution is possible. It is scientifically proven that all species are evolving into more complex beings. Innate knowledge or racial memory within all species is the understanding of newborns of all kinds to automatically know specific details and traits that the mother does not have to teach them. Therefore, innate knowledge helps every species naturally evolve towards more complex organisms. Lyle Watson claims that it was a Japanese scientist who observed the 100th monkey effect in 1952. In this observation, he discovered that a certain portion or percentage of monkeys learned or developed a new trait. The knowledge became an innate ability in that species. This is further testimony to a collective consciousness among species. Everything in existence has a natural vibration to it, from our atoms all the way to the vastness of the universe. To show a simple connection between the earth and our bodies, take a look at our body's harmonic focal points, better known as our chakras. Just as there are harmonic focal points on the guitar string, there are locations within our body where our vibrations culminate. In Eastern philosophies, these 7 chakras are used to bring health and balance to the physical and spiritual body. Our Earth also has 7 chakra points at equally distant locations from one another. There is 1 chakra point on each continent. The root chakra is in Mount Shasta, California. The sexual chakra is in the Isle of Sun, Lake Titicaca in South America. The solar plexus chakra is in Uluru Kata Juta in Australia. The heart chakra is in Glastonbury or Shaftesbury, England. The throat chakra is where the Great Pyramids of Giza in Egypt are. The heart chakra is at Kuhe Malak Sia in Iran. And the crown chakra is at Mount Kailas in Tibet. Scientifically, this is explained because at the core of our Earth, there is a molten iron crystal that resonates at approximately 7 Hertz. There are energy vortexes all over the Earth where electromagnetic energy emanates. There are also several vile vortices surrounding the equator where strange anomalies occur, such as radio and compass malfunctions, as well as plane and ship disappearances. You may have heard of a few of these. So the intangible parts of our existence, such as emotions, are part of the true reality of higher consciousness. If emotions are part of a realm that we cannot experience with our five senses, then how is it that we are all aware of our emotions? What most people believe to be emotions are not truly the emotion itself. What we are experiencing is the physical manifestation of these emotions. Anger causes disturbance in the psyche, which manifests itself in the ego. These manifestations cause the heart rate to increase, body temperature to rise, and spawn many other physical traits that signify anger. Just as music from the radio is a physical manifestation of an intangible signal, our experience of emotion is the physical manifestation of an intangible signal as well. It has been shown that our emotions have a vibratory frequency to them. Furthermore, there are only two emotions that humankind experiences: fear and love. All other emotions branch either directly or indirectly from these two emotions. Fear has a long and slow frequency vibration to it, while love has a very rapid and high frequency. To show that vibration is the very foundation of existence, Hans Jene developed what is known as cymatics in the 1940s to show that when vibrations of sound are passed through a form of media, there is a set pattern that will follow. When the frequency increases, the media develops into a more complex pattern. This is precisely what is happening to our Earth and to humanity. There are 64 possible codes of amino acids in our DNA structure made from 4 elements: carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen. By any means of logic, we should have all 64 codes activated within our DNA structure. Yet we presently only have 20 active codes.
And of these 64 possibilities, it appears that only 20 of these codes are turned on right now for us, the 20 amino acids. There is a switch that turns off and turns on where those coding sites lie, and that the switch for that turning off and turning on is what we call emotion. And this is the first time that we've ever seen the patterns of emotion directly physically linked to human genetic material. Well, fear is a long, slow wave of emotion. So this wave of fear is a long, slow wave and touches relatively few sites on this DNA. So an individual living in fear is limited to the number of antennae that they have available to them, whereas an individual living in the pattern of love, this is love. In DNA, you can see it's a higher frequency, shorter wavelength. We have many more potential sites for coding along that genetic pattern. This information, this is amazing. This is the first time we've ever had a hard digital link between emotion and genetics.
This is important to understand because another researcher named Vladimir Popanov measured tiny particles of light called photons inside a vacuum tube. The photons were scattered as expected. A sample of DNA was then entered into the vacuum tube and they measured the photons again. They found that the particles of light aligned themselves along the axis of the DNA. Then, as they removed the DNA sample, the photons remained aligned to the same form of the DNA even though no DNA was present. This is what is known as the phantom DNA experiment. Science has now bridged a very important gap between physical and ethereal, or spiritual. Our emotions directly affect the structure of our DNA, which directly shapes the physical world we experience every day. So the messages left by the ancients that we've explained here were more than just prophecies about a one-world government or a new world order. We now understand why the study of the heavenly bodies were so important. The rotation and orbit of all that makes up our universe serves as a clock to map changes and transitions. This helped the ancients understand that the change of the heavenly bodies were a mirror to the changes of all existence. December 21st, 2012 is simply a natural transition from one form of energy to the next, the transcendental evolution of man. This date is what's known as 0 point. Our sun, as well as our planet Earth, is losing its magnetic field as the Earth is slowing in its rotation. All the while, its base resonant frequency, also known as the Schumann cavity resonance, is increasing in accordance with the predictable sequence of the Fibonacci theory. At a cellular level, our bodies respond to an electromagnetic pulse. The ancients called this the sacred circuit. The cells receive this pulse from the brain, which receives its pulse from the heart, which receives its pulse from the earth. This pulse comes from the solar system, which from there comes from the galaxy, which ultimately comes from our entire universe. We literally share a pulse with all of existence. Yet another example of everything being one. For as long as scientists have been recording the Earth's pulse, it has remained at approximately 7.8 cycles per second. This was a constant fixed number until 1986 into 1987. It rapidly began increasing to about 9 cycles per second in 1996. So in one decade, it increased by about 2 cycles per second. By 2012, this pulse will be right around 13 cycles per second, just as the Fibonacci theory indicates. What does this mean for humanity? Just as cymatics has shown that higher frequencies result in more complex patterns, we are now experiencing the beginning of a major shift in both physical and spiritual vibration. It's difficult to understand what exactly will happen to our physical bodies, but ancient scriptures, pagan and monotheistic religions, mystery schools, and secret fraternal orders have all given indications as to what this experience will be like. This will be the shift of the ages, the transcendental period of monumental changes to humanity. Those unprepared for this transition will likely not be able to cope with the rapid changes in the psyche. The only way to prepare for what is to come is what we have sought after for our entire lives: truth. Not the truth about governments, commerce, religions, terrorism, or anything external, but the truth within ourselves, within our psyche and our shadow self. Especially in Western cultures, we are taught that being normal means only being happy and never sad, only loving and never angry, only forgiving and never jealous. This sounds plausible, but it is not. We are not meant to repress any negative emotions because it causes imbalance. To conquer our emotions, we must embrace them, not fight them. We must acknowledge them and allow them to serve their purpose as we learn from them. The ancient Essene culture left teachings dating back about 6,000 years. They taught that our relationships with one another, with the universe, and with situations and events are mirrors of the parts of our psyche that need to be cleansed. Author Greg Braden beautifully explains this entire segment at great length in his work. His hard work and understanding of these subjects contributed largely to the marriage between science and spirituality. It is very important to understand that when you fear loss, fear death, fear war, fear terrorism, or fear change, you are giving others the ability to control you based on those fears. When you fight against poverty or against racism, when you fight for relationships or for freedom, you are outwardly attempting to repress that which has been placed before you to conquer inwardly. These situations are mirrors of our fears. This is why it is important to love and only love. Love those who stand with you, but especially those who stand against you. Don't look at your fears as a threat. Rather understand that this material world is only a physical manifestation of either the love or fear in your consciousness. It's as plain as day. All you need to conquer in your life is in your face. If you want to understand what your true inner fears are, analyze your ambitions and your inhibitions. Everything explained here about the esoteric agenda of the elite few at the very top is nothing to fear. They have been at work for thousands of years behind the scenes to manipulate humanity, and it has worked. Until now.
It's very easy for any system of thought, religious or otherwise, that comes along. It's very easy to play on that, to play on our insecurities, to assure us all is well, we'll all be taken care of. We lap that up. So don't blame religion. Blame our own insecurities, which has allowed religion to flourish, and which has allowed so many systems of thought that are disempowering to flourish throughout human history. That's why we can't get out of it.
Ron Sakeley, Department Chairman, Chemistry, University of California, Berkeley, showed that DNA acts as an antenna for cellular upregulation. The primary function they taught us about what DNA is about. It's a receiver and transmitter of photons, light, and phonon sound. For what? Cellular upregulation, meaning that their water molecules, the pyramid power around the DNA spiral energizing strands are taking in the spiritual energy of love vibrations and then sending it out for manifesting, precipitating in a quantum field, the physical matter of the body. These are hertz, frequencies, or cycles per second that the musicians can retune their instruments to play and experiment with. Why? Again, these are the Creator's musical scale, the original solfeggio, buried for 3,000 years in the Bible. So the ancient priests who knew how to levitate the huge stones for the building of the pyramids and the Masonic knowledge that predated ancient Egypt, the ability to have this information, these frequencies, serve the function of creation, destruction, and miracles on behalf of the empowered people who had access to this knowledge. I say that because of this metaphor. This is the difference between the power of our Creator and anything else, particularly evil. That you can go into a pitch black room full of evil, full of darkness, and light a little candle, and instantly that darkness.
My guide then led me to the image of Horus carved here on the floor. The thought, of course, came, was this all a tourist ruse? But the sincerity I felt with him and the tears streaming from his eyes wetting the tops of my hand erased all doubt. Directly behind the naos is a chapel containing a model of the solar bark. This is the ship by which Horus as helmsman negotiated the dark waters of the night. The bark, or ship you see here, was found by Egyptologists buried by the base of the Great Pyramid at Giza. At first it was thought that the ship was used for symbolic purposes only. That view is changing now that the ship is being more closely examined. The ship is 120 feet long and has a displacement of over 40 tons. The construction is ingenious. The hull was made up of hundreds of pieces of shape wood, which are all held together with rope that is threaded through the inside of the boat. Now, once the boat enters the river or the sea, the wet wood swells, while simultaneously the wet rope shrinks, thus making the boat entirely watertight and seaworthy. In examining the boat, John Anthony West said, "It's far more seaworthy than any ship available to Christopher Columbus." The hull of these ships bears certain markings which suggest to experienced sailors that they were used for far more than ceremonial purposes. In fact, they were actually sailed. They were seaworthy. Keep this fact in mind as we now look at the outer wall of the Temple of Edfu. It is here at Edfu, through the reading of its hieroglyphic texts, that Gurdjieff and the professor could have come upon a doorway to pre-sand Egypt. Here inscribed on the walls of the temple, parts of which date back to the Pyramid Age of 2500 BC, are texts which speak of the Zep-Tipi, or the first time, the dawn of prehistoric Egyptian civilization. Not the ancient Egypt that we know, but the Egypt that we don't know. These ancient texts tell of 7 sages who gave birth to a new civilization. They were not natives of Egypt, but of an island known as the homeland of the primeval ones, which sank during a catastrophic flood. Can you imagine what Gurdjieff and Professor Skridlov must have experienced as they stood here reading these texts? Step by step, Gurdjieff and the professor are finding their way back in time to prehistoric, pre-sand Egypt. Not surprisingly, these building texts of Edfu say very much what Gurdjieff himself will say many years later when he writes his great initiatory book, All and Everything, the first series. There he will write that there was a flood that sank the island of Atlantis, and the surviving members of an esoteric Atlantean society known as the Accaldans made their way here to Egypt, where they inaugurated a new civilization. Did Gurdjieff first learn of these events here? He does not say, and so we cannot be sure, but the parallel exists. Before leaving the temple, it's important to speak of the Shemsu Hor, the followers of Horus. Horace Schwaller de Lubitz translates the Egyptian name, those who follow the path of Horus. The Shemsu Hor are those who bore with them, quote, a knowledge of divine origin, unquote. This esoteric knowledge allowed them to transform themselves, to make a soul, to, in essence, unite Horus and Set. This knowledge allowed them, too, to reign over pre-sand Egypt, that prehistoric period before the advent of the pharaonic dynasties, which, as you may recall, date from 3100 BC. Quite old. So could it be said that the Shemsu Hor were descendants of the seven sages, those who inaugurated the new civilization in Egypt, depicted on the walls here at Edfu, as we've seen? That seems quite likely. And if so, that would mean that the Shemsu Hor's lineage extends to the Society of Accaldans, those who Gurdjieff speaks about in his book, All and Everything. In brief, what is being suggested is that there is a possible correspondence between what Gurdjieff writes and what is said on the temple walls of Edfu. Of course, we cannot be sure, but all the same, the connections are there. It's something to ponder. We're in a felucca on the Nile, and as you hear, there is great company here, many bullfrogs. Well, Mr. Gurdjieff tells us that he and Professor Skridlov went up the Nile to its source. The Nile is one of the world's oldest rivers, its longest, and what's unusual about the Nile is that it flows south to north, that is, it flows upstream. Mr. Gurdjieff and Professor Skridlov, going to the headwaters of the Nile, are passing out of Egypt and going into Abyssinia, present-day Ethiopia. Now, what do they find there? Gurdjieff tells us in his All and Everything, the first series, that after the destruction of Atlantis, the esoteric society, the Society of Accaldans, migrated to Abyssinia. The surviving members did. And so Gurdjieff, by going to the headwaters of the Nile, is going to the source of knowledge and wisdom. When he arrives there, what does he find? Amazingly, he finds Christianity. Not the contemporary Christianity we know, but the Christianity, so to say, before Christ. Let me read to you what Gurdjieff says about this. The Christian church, the Christian form of worship, was not invented by the fathers of the church. It was all taken in a ready-made form from Egypt, only not from the Egypt that we know, but from one which we do not know. This Egypt was in the same place as the other, but it existed much earlier. It will seem strange to many people when I say that this prehistoric Egypt was Christian many thousands of years before the birth of Christ. That is to say, that its religion was composed of the same principles and ideas that constitute true Christianity. What Gurdjieff found was a school a school of Christianity, an esoteric school that taught self-transformation, a sacred science. He found the secret part of Christianity. So in summary, what Gurdjieff is saying is that the principles, the primary principles and ideas of Christianity existed long before Jesus Christ, and they existed in prehistoric Egypt. One. Two, that Christianity, as we know it, has two sides, an exoteric side and an esoteric side. The exoteric side, because it is given publicly and without any initiation or training, without any preparation, is always subject to distortion, deviation. But the second part, the esoteric part, if practiced, can rectify those distortions and deviations. And this is what he's bringing when he brings the ancient teaching of the Fourth Way to the West. Having found this, he recognized that there were certain elements of the teaching that were missing. And so he journeyed to Central Asia, the Hindu Kush, and found many brotherhoods, one of which was a brotherhood he called the World Brotherhood, and the other one was the Sarmung. So he actually does make contact with the Sarmung. But as you recall, its birthplace was Babylon, and its origin was about 2500 BC. Elements of the teaching, as I say, had migrated northward with time. So these he reassembled into the teaching, reformulated it for modern times, and brought it to the West. But why he came, he said, was unless, and I'm quoting, unless the wisdom of the East and the energy of the West, not the science, but the energy of the West is harnessed and used harmoniously, the world will destroy itself. Everyone in one way or another is talking about something like that now, but this is back at the turn of the century. Very few, if any, people were talking in this way. The Fourth Way, what is it?
The problem comes into being when we forget that. When we forget that, then we start blaming God, or blaming another man, or blaming this country, or blaming that country, or blaming ourselves. That's a weird layer, and nobody really spends too much time there realizing that we're all in it. Then there's a third layer above that, within God's communications to mankind, whether it be through the Quran or through the Bible or just handed down from our grandfathers, ancestors to us through the spirit land. I mean, whatever method it is that he's going to communicate with us, he will. And that layer is one of celebration, because he's established the principle, and he's convinced angels already. Angels are another race of beings that exist. I'm not an angel in a literal sense. I'm a human being. And an angel is not a human being. An angel is an angel. And they are segregated. There's a group with one side on the war, and there's a group with the other side on the war. I don't know how they engage in this war, or how they shoot at each other, or the methods they use. I only know it's a spiritual realm, and it's principalities, and it's beyond us, and they fight over us. And these angels, they have a way of communicating with us that they've been convinced that the war has been won by God, not by the rebellion against God. And so they don't need any more convincing. As far as they're concerned, God can end the war whenever he's ready. And God's ready to end the war. The reason why it hasn't ended is because we, humanity, are not in a position to demonstrate that principality that was fought over, because the other side, the side of darkness, is struggling to suppress our enlightenment of this war. Once humanity, realize that we're in a spiritual war and that it's not about me, it's about us. That means it's about that Hindu, and it's about that Muslim, and it's about that atheist. It's about the four of us. And so we all look at each other and we all say, you know what, we're really looking to the same place. We're looking to the same source for answers. Now, the atheist is a weird animal because they'll deny everything. But you know what? He's created just like me by the same God as me, as with the Muslim, as with the Hindu. We all have the same creator. And whatever it is that you're thinking he created us, even if it's a random act of nothingness, I don't have an answer for you. I only know that we will all agree, or most of us will agree, or enough of us will agree to demonstrate in principality to all the worlds out there, including ourselves, hey, we all have the same creator, and this is the spiritual war. And we begin to interact with each other, principalities that demonstrates God is a just God. And once that happens, there's no more reason to fight, which means the war is over. See, that's like hard to explain, but it's the final layer of my comprehension of what all of this stuff is about. So when someone says in the Christian world, ask God to forgive you and he will of your sins, and then you will be saved, it says a lot, but it doesn't say enough. It says a lot, but when we go back into the world, we forget about that, and we get involved in the things of life, and we're back to hating God again. You know, because he didn't come down and save me immediately.
Mystic Scribes presents perhaps the most important documentary television series ever produced. These are The Urantia Files. Fact or fiction? What are the Urantia Files? At the beginning of the 20th century, scores of celestial beings spent the next few decades delivering their fifth epoch of revelation to us. They said that their message was to benefit us Urantians by way of the knowledge we will gain from the revelation. They contend that their revelation is nothing less than the entire history of the cosmos. And this revealed knowledge is what this riveting new documentary television series is all about. Let the apocalypse begin. Are you ready for this supposedly divine knowledge yet? If your answer is yes, then hang on tight, because you're in for the ride of your life. The Celestials tell us that our world Urantia is just one of trillions of inhabited worlds lying within 7 super universes. They tell us that we are all individual personalities that survive death and that we're ultimately destined to unite with God. They tell us that due to these revelations, we are in the process of taking a gigantic evolutionary leap forward. And they tell us much, much more. For they tell us of the birth of our super universe, our solar system, and our own world. And they tell of our evolutionary history and maintain that it's both a unique and very tragic one. For they tell us of the Lucifer rebellion that enveloped scores of worlds, including our own Urantia. The Celestials also tell us of their involvement in our development as a species. And they give us some astonishing details about our very, very special place in the hearts and minds of all creation. For they tell us a great deal about the man we all know as Jesus of Nazareth. Information far more complete and wondrous than anything we've ever known about him before. For they say that he is also our Michael son, creator and sovereign ruler of Nebadon, our local universe. They also tell us much about God, the universal Father, and the pantheon of celestial personalities as well. Could any of this possibly be true? Are we really just one of several trillion inhabited worlds throughout a vast creation? Are we really now known throughout much of creation as the world of the cross? Were Adam and Eve not only real, but celestial beings who came here to biologically uplift humanity? Is Jesus really ruler of not just Urantia, but millions of other inhabited worlds too? Does a fragment of God really dwell within all of us? These are the Urantia Files. Are they fact or are they fiction? We intend to find out. Do you? 12/21/2012.
Modern Astronomy in the Urantia Book. The Central Universe. According to the Urantia Book, at the center of our universe lies a large area that is hidden from view. It contains 1 billion bodies distributed in 7 circuits in orbit around the eternal Isle of Paradise. The current figure shows this area. The nature of this area is described in another video, God, Paradise, and the Central Universe, that can be found on YouTube. The superuniverse level. The superuniverse level consists of 7 huge superuniverses as shown in the current figure. Each superuniverse is subdivided into smaller administrative units as shown in the current slide. The authors call our superuniverse Orvanton, and our planet is called Urantia. The system our planet resides in is called Satania. The Central Universe and the 7 superuniverses are the only places that are inhabited in the Master Universe. The Master Universe contains the Central Universe, the 7 superuniverses, and the 4 outer space levels. When we move from the central universe out into the superuniverse level, we now have the advantage that our astronomers can and do actually observe what this level of the master universe looks like, and we can compare it with the descriptions in the Urantia book. When we do, we find what appear to be some problems. But before we discuss the problems, it's helpful to view the picture the authors give us of the master universe, excluding the central universe, and then consider what astronomers have seen as they observe, describe, and measure the universe. Many of the numbers used for distance in astronomy and in the Urantia book are in light years. Light travels at 186,000 miles per second, so a light year is about 6 trillion miles. The star nearest to us, after the Sun, is Proxima Centauri, which is about 4.2 light years distant. The authors tell us that the 7 superuniverses follow an elliptical path around the central universe, as shown in the current slide and in the following 2 slides. These illustrations are typical of the way that artists have depicted the 7 superuniverses from the early days of the Urantian community. These pictures are in harmony with some information in the Urantia book. Orvonton is usually pictured as a galaxy, no doubt our own Milky Way galaxy. According to astronomers, the visible universe is about 13 billion years old. So the light from the most distant galaxies traveled about 13 billion years to reach us, which means that they were 13 billion light years from us. The actual size of the universe is much larger since it has been expanding ever since that light left the first galaxies about 13 billion years ago. The current slide shows the universe as far as the astronomers have mapped it, about 6 billion. Finally, I'd like to quote a short piece from an old friend, Dr. Meredith Sprunger, titled, "Preparing for Scholarly Evaluation of the Urantia Book." Mature and intelligent students of the Urantia book ought also to give up any inerrancy doctrine. Hopefully many have never held such a view. The Urantia book has errors or discrepancies in biblical references, in scientific statement, in historical references, and in logic. I have never been much interested in these historical, scientific, and logical aspects of the Urantia book because they are peripheral to the real purpose of the book, spiritual enlightenment. It is not primarily a book of history or science. It is a book of spiritual insight and guidance. I regard the Urantia book revelatory for the same reason I so regard the Bible. It contains the highest quality of insight into spiritual truth and reality of any book I know. It presents the most meaningful spiritual cosmology available on the planet. The best in Christian eschatology pales by comparison. It contains the most dynamic and spiritually uplifting picture of the life and teaching of Jesus available. It integrates science, philosophy, and religion more effectively than any other religious source. It is validated more completely by experience than any religious view with which I am acquainted. This is the important thing about the Urantia book. Just as the Bible has been subjected to objective scientific study, so the Urantia book must be critically analyzed if it is to become a reliable source of spiritual guidance for humanity. Errors or discrepancies of fact or logic should be pointed out and examined. Philosophical and spiritual truths should be studied and evaluated. We must understand, however, that such an objective study cannot prove or disprove spiritual realities. It cannot determine what is or is not revelatory. It can be an important tool in helping the individual and society make evaluations and judgments regarding such truths. It is generally assumed by religious scholars that spiritual reality does not contradict scientific fact or the authentic aspects of human experience. Unquote. And a final word from the philosopher Rodin of Alexandria, as recorded in paper 160. Only a brave person is willing honestly to admit and fearlessly to face what a sincere and logical mind discovers.
There's a group with one side on the war, and there's a group with the other side on the war. I don't know how they engage in this war, or how they shoot at each other, or the methods they use. I only know it's a spiritual realm, and it's principalities, and it's beyond us, and they fight over us. And these angels They have a way of communicating with us that they've been convinced that the war has been won by God, not by the rebellion against God. And so they don't need any more convincing. As far as they're concerned, God can end the war whenever He's ready. And God's ready to end the war. The reason why it hasn't ended is because we, humanity, are not in a position to demonstrate that principality that was fought over. Because the other side, the side of darkness, is struggling to suppress our enlightenment of this war. Once we, humanity, realize that we're in a spiritual war and that it's not about me, it's about us. That means it's about that Hindu, and it's about that Muslim, and it's about that atheist. It's about the four of us. And so we all look at each other and we all say, you know what, we're really looking to the same place. We're looking to the same source for answers. Now, the atheist is a weird animal because they'll deny everything. But you know what? He's created just like me by the same God as me, as with the Muslim, as with the Hindu. We all have the same creator. And whatever it is that you're thinking He created us, even if it's a random act of nothingness, I don't have an answer for you. I only know that we will all agree, or most of us will agree, or enough of us will agree to demonstrate in principality to all the worlds out there, including ourselves. Hey, we all have the same creator, and this is a spiritual war. And we begin to interact with each other, principalities that demonstrates God is a just God. And once that happens, there's no more reason to fight, which means the war is over. See, that's like hard to explain, but it's the final layer of my comprehension of what all of this stuff is about. So when someone says in the Christian world, ask God to forgive you and He will of your sins, and then you will be saved. It says a lot, but it doesn't say enough. It says a lot, but when we go back into the world, we forget about that, and we get involved in the things of life, and we're back to hating God again. You know, because He didn't come down and save me immediately. But if we take that deeper and say, He saved us in principality, He saved us in principle, so that when there is a judgment, if and when there is a judgment, that event that occurred in a literal sense 2012 years ago, that event is the evidence that sets me free from the things that I've done that go against the principles that the war is fighting over. So, I'm not appealing to anyone for anything. I'm simply trying to connect the dots and put some continuity in between different cultures and different places on our earth so that we can stop fighting. Just stop fighting. There's enough room for everyone on the earth, and there's enough food to feed the entire world if we are generous enough to share. We need to we need to educate the educators. We need to teach the elite. We need to show the leaders what the war is about so that they can see it. because they're blind. They're blind. They can't see the spiritual world. If they did, they wouldn't do what they're doing. They would lead.
Let me read to you what Gurdjieff says about this. The Christian church, the Christian form of worship, was not invented by the fathers of the church. It was all taken in a ready-made form from Egypt, only not from the Egypt that we know, but from one which we do not know. This Egypt was in the same place as the other, but it existed much earlier. It will seem strange to many people when I say that this prehistoric Egypt was Christian many thousands of years before the birth of Christ. That is to say, that its religion was composed of the same principles and ideas that constitute true Christianity. What Gurdjieff found was a school of Christianity, an esoteric school that taught self-transformation, a sacred science. He found the secret part of Christianity. So in summary, what Gurdjieff is saying is that the principles, the primary principles and ideas of Christianity existed long before Jesus Christ, and they existed in prehistoric Egypt. 1. 2, that Christianity, as we know it, has two sides, an exoteric side and an esoteric side. The exoteric side, because it is given publicly and without any initiation or training, without any preparation, is always subject to distortion, deviation. But the second part, the esoteric part, if practiced, can rectify those distortions and deviations. And this is what he's bringing when he brings the ancient teaching of the Fourth Way to the West. Having found this, he recognized that there were certain elements of the teaching that were missing. And so he journeyed to Central Asia, the Hindu Kush, and found many brotherhoods, one of which was a brotherhood he called the World Brotherhood, and the other one was the Sarmung. So he actually does make contact with the Sarmung. But as you recall, its birthplace was Babylon, and its origin was about 2500 BC. Elements of the teaching, as I say, had migrated northward with time. So these he reassembled into the teaching, reformulated it for modern times, and brought it to the West. But why he came, he said, was unless, and I'm quoting, unless the wisdom of the East and the energy of the West, not the science, but the energy of the West is harnessed and used harmoniously, the world will destroy itself. Everyone, in one way or another, is talking about something like that now, but this is back at the turn of the century. Very few, if any, people were talking in this way. The Fourth Way, what is it? Well, let's go over briefly what the Fourth Way is, but not on the Nile. It's beautiful, tranquil, and it isn't where the teaching is placed. The teaching is placed in ordinary life. There's no imagination, no withdrawal. The student stays in life, accepts life as it is, and learns to process the impressions, the negativity, the suffering, the uncertainty, the illusion. He learns to process this, process life, to come to real life.
A lot of the sightings are in these really rural places, you know, in South America, up in the mountains, in places where there's no wires, no power stations, no wires like that.
I have a question from someone in the chat room. This is from Janet L. She asked, does Nancy Red Star have any sense of what happened to the Native American civilizations that have disappeared? Did they ascend to the fifth dimension, she asked.
Well, I do have one of the first interviews in my film is with a historian for the Anasazi and the Dene Nation, and he talks about there's some symbols on the rocks down in Canyon de Chelly that we went down there and filmed, and he talks about what this particular symbol means, and he said that he draws the symbol it's in the film, he draws the symbol, two spirals with a bridge in between them, and he said this is where the Star people came down and met with the Anasazi, and that they had contact, and he showed me these, you see the old cliff dwellings. He said that's where the star maps were drawn all over the ceilings up there in those cliff dwellings, so that they could time when the visitation would occur. So I believe there was a lot more visitation in those days when things were more human. So we have to get back to that place in order for that to happen again. They're definitely not coming to save us.
Right. I agree.
That ain't going to happen. Yeah, they will help us rebuild, and they always do come back through the changing cycles of worlds.
Interesting. Molly Keating, the lady we were just talking about from your book, states that almost every tribe has legends that speak about the sky people who came down from the stars. And I know that the Hopi talk about the Kachinas as star people. Mm-hmm. But that's probably something I'd have to ask Hopi about to get more.
Yeah, I can't talk about Kachinas per se. It's, not my place, other than what's in the book from other elders, who have permission to do that. But I couldn't, the talk of the Kachina is really by an initiated person within the Hopi clans. But I encourage people to try to find that interview because they do talk about that, the two Hopi elders in the Art Bell archives on Coast to Coast. I mean, I have the tape. I recorded it, but I think it still is available. I don't think it's on YouTube either.
It's interesting, the Hopis, the Iroquois, all these different groups, they have their own bit of the story, don't they?
Well, like the word Anishinaabe, which is the Midewiwin people. Anishinaabe, as she says, because she was in the Midewiwin. She was going through the initiation of the Midewiwin ceremonies. Molly Keating, the Sadquist, was. That means man who came down from the stars.
Mm. And in your book on page 30, there's this very important statement that says, many artifacts over the centuries seem to indicate that there was an extremely advanced civilization long before what we consider our recorded history. And I wondered if you could elaborate on that.
Well, I mean, all you have to do is watch Ancient Aliens to get an inkling of that. I think that's been pretty well established, maybe not mainstream, but certainly people who are putting the pieces of the puzzle together. The monolithic structures like in Ohio, for instance, when I was being interviewed by the History Channel, which they took the information out and used it later on in the interview without me. But one of the elders, one of the elders in my nation that was helping me with some of the questions, because you need that. Actually, this information actually came through a group of Cree elders up in Canada who were talking to me about the Mound area, and it was confirmed by one of the elders in the Cherokee Nation that there was what it was called a standing columnar wave. It was actually at the Serpent Mound, and it was created through the ceremonies and the dancing. It was like tracking the powers of subatomic matter, really. It was like the secret of energy. The feathers were antennae, and the beads were transistors, and they would balance the aura and create a pulsating light with a radius of 40 miles. So that was like an electromagnetic attunement with the earth. And the column became an actual literal light column of fire. The light was of electromagnetic pulse, like a firelight. But this whole ceremony was lost during the Mound period because of what happened. However, the rituals, the dancing, the drumming, and the chanting, and that still go on, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But literally the feathers would become antennae and the beads would be transistors, and that was used to balance the aura, the light chakra waves. We're all light. Everything is light. In subatomic physics to subatomic human physics. And so at those centers there was ways of utilizing that light, and that would help to cleanse and activate that grid line that the edifice was built on. Say it's a monolithic structure like the Serpent Mound. That is one of the places where they did those secret primordial DNA rituals. And that's what we're going through now. We have to activate our DNA, and everything we're being bombarded with, for instance, fluoride in the water coagulates in the pineal gland. One of the things I do is I drink elemental gold and red clay.
Really?
I mix it. Yeah. And what happens is it takes the fluoride out of your pineal gland. I actually drink the gold and I mix it with the red clay, which is almost like an alchemical. It's almost like the two elements for Indian people is the red clay, which they use in the sun dance. They also use it in the kiva in the pueblo. But it has gold in it because I harvested in a cave. And when I come out of that cave, I have gold flakes all over my face.
Wow.
And so I drink that, and what it does is it cleans the blood and it takes the fluoride out of the pineal gland, because the ascension is all part of these light waves. You know, the ascension is a literal ascension. It's also a light ascension within our own body, so that we can access the information we need to get to the other side of this. And everything that's being done is trying to stop that, because particularly indigenous people have more than 12 strands of DNA. Okay, they got like 22. African people and indigenous people, the original DNA was at 22 strands.
That's fascinating.
Which gives you abilities that people who have 6 strands don't have. Most of the people who are running the war machine are 6-strand DNA. I mean, you just got to look at them and you know there's something wrong. I mean,
true.
Everything they do, is mimicking the ancient mysteries. Everything that they worship, in secret. The Egyptian mystery schools and Babylon and the Masons, and
amazing
yeah.
stuff.
Did you know that the first name of the Republican Party was the Red Men?
Really?
Mm-hmm.
What was that all about?
Well, it's all about that. That's what they do. They take. It's all stored in the Vatican. All the secret ancient texts, the real knowledge, is all being withheld from humanity. So we have to get it on our own, and the way we can access these archives is through our genetic coding. But if we're filling it with fluoride, then what's happening is we're not evolving. We can't evolve because fluoride kills.
Oh yeah.
Brain cells.
You know, I feel like we've only scratched the surface tonight. I can tell you just have loads of other information there, and I want to let everyone know again that we're speaking with Nancy Red Star. The URL is www.nancyredstar.com. Her book is called Star Ancestors, and you're working on a movie about the book as well, correct?
Oh, yeah, I'm working on Star Ancestors. Actually, I have a YouTube channel. It's just Nancy Red Star, and I have about, 167 little vignettes on there. Some of it is, I have a news site, which is just the real material world, but I also have quite a few clips from the films. So if anybody wants to peruse over there, they can.
Well, I want to thank you very much for coming on the show this evening, Nancy. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you. I hope we get to do it again. Is there any closing thoughts that you'd like to leave with our audience?
Well, no, not so much, but tonight we are in the season of the snow moon, and tomorrow we will be in the season of the cold moon. So I guess we're in winter.
Indeed. Well, it's been a real pleasure speaking with you, Nancy, and
yeah, thank you.
Thank you, and let's do this again. And you have a happy New Year, and that goes out to everyone tonight. I want to thank everyone in the chat room: Barbara DeLong, Curious Listener, Dale Ray 19, Eva Long. We've got about 10 anonymous guests in. Pemic 1212, Janet L, Jeff 72, RD 47, Shay Ken. I hope everyone had a Merry Christmas as well. Have a Happy New Year. Thanks a bunch, Nancy. We'll talk to you again soon.
You.
And have a good evening, ma'am.
All righty, you too.
Good night.
Imagine a cookie jar on top of a refrigerator, and this 2-year-old kid discovers that. He asks his mom what it is, and his mom tells him those are cookies. You want one? He says, yeah. So she gets the cookie out of the jar and gives it to the little boy, and he enjoys it. He comes back the next day, and his mom's not there, but he sees the cookie and takes it, eats it, and he enjoys those cookies. They're good. He invites his friends over, and they all sit around and have a cookie party. And then one day he goes in there, and his mom's in there, and he's got like a stomach ache, and she asks him why, and he tells her why, because of eating all them cookies. She tells her son, "You're true. How'd you get up on the refrigerator anyway?" Kind of comical. But she says, look, you can only have one a day. All right? And I need to be here because it's dangerous for you to go get that cookie off the top of that refrigerator anyway. End of story. But you know what? To that little boy, he just discovered a law. That's a law. His mom put down a law. So then the next day when he goes in the refrigerator and he looks up at that cookie jar, he's accountable for what he knows. He wasn't yesterday. Other than the fact that he got a stomachache, he wasn't accountable for it. So now when he goes up to get a cookie, he's breaking the law. And that's what sin is. Breaking the law of God. End of story. We can put everything into it that we want to, but the bottom line is, with humanity, when we break God's law, there are consequences. And the consequences is we die. If a house is divided against itself, that house can't stand. If Satan opposes himself and is divided, he can't stand. His end has come. In fact, no one can enter a strong man's house, that's a human being, and carry off his possessions, unless he first ties up the strong man. That's possession of a man by a devil. I tell you the truth, all the sins and the blasphemies of men will be forgiven them. All of them will be forgiven men. That's humanity. But whoever blasphemies against the Holy Spirit will never be forgiven. He is guilty of eternal sin. That's the devil. He said this because they were saying that he had an evil spirit in him. The person he was talking to. You see? That's my religion. It comes from the Holy Spirit, and it's written in the Holy Bible. Today. In fact, I was reading from the New International Version, which is totally mismanaged and totally rearranged, and the truth that is in it has been altered to be almost truth in many places. But the thing about the Bible is that the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, is the same Spirit for me as it is for you. I mean, there are there are belief systems that go back thousands of years that believe in a primary spirit. And there may be other things involved in there and other names and characters and personalities, but they have a primary spirit up here that is overall. Different nomadic tribes have customs and things they follow, and they too have a primary spirit. You know, that primary spirit up there is over everything else. It's over everything else. And the only one who is breaking the law or sinning against or fighting against that spirit, who will never be forgiven by that spirit, are devils. Because we never did. We don't go against it. We might resist it, you know. And the reason why I say we don't go against it is because all the sins and blasphemies of men will be forgiven them. And sins is transgressions of the law. Sins is stealing cookies from the cookie jar. But whoever goes against the Holy Spirit will never be forgiven. He is guilty of eternal sin, is referring to evil angels. When our Creator comes back to get us, or when we go to meet Him in some transitional form, or however you believe, the wicked is destroyed. Again, it's not referring to men. It's referring to the wickedness within us is destroyed. So, in conclusion to this, all the different things that we see, and all the confusion that we have, and all the disagreements that we have are man-made, or devil-made, because one of the devil's names is chaos. He's a liar, and the originator of it. Babylon. Babylon has moved a long way. When we had a tree of the knowledge of good and evil, that's a cookie jar. And when we were told, don't do that, we did it anyway. And the consequences were, the earth was just about destroyed in a catastrophic event. Some generations later, at the time of Noah, when there was this flood, and that catastrophic event was caused by humanity, by mankind, by the knowledge that we perverted, that we got from the tree that we weren't supposed to take it from. Where did we get it? What is that tree? Was that tree a literal tree? I don't know. But I know the knowledge that came into us was from the devil. The devil provided us with a lot of secrets that we're a 2-year-old kid, man. We can't handle that much. And we perverted it through time until we just about destroyed the world. And then we hold God accountable for that. I know, well, God says right in the Bible that God created the flood, or God made a flood come across the earth. Well, that's man's way of writing it. The fact is, we did it through our knowledge and perversion of that knowledge. We just about wiped out the earth. There's a few people there, tidbits here, and they repopulate the earth, so to speak, up until the time of Nimrod, and Nimrod comes in, and he's right after the same thing. He wants to establish an empire. He wants to build a new world order. And he puts down the Tower of Babel, and then it gets confounded of all the languages, and we're spread across the world, because if that didn't happen, there's nothing we could not have accomplished, is what the Bible says. Look at it spiritually. And then thousands of years go by from Nimrod. And the pure religion through the Spirit of God is perverted. And we get all these different religions and all these different belief systems and everything coming into play. The Hebrew people were chosen as the scribe to write down events. They got it. Even though they wrote it down in a literal way and it's been altered, you can't alter it enough to not glean from it what the Spirit wants you to know. It's just the way. It's the way maybe of the tribes of Europe. I don't know. But somebody condensed all of that in the form of a holy book, and I have it. Now why will everybody attack it and say, well, it's false, well, it's been changed? Oh, wait a minute, it's been changed. If it's been changed, that means whatever the original content was is true. So if we look beyond what they've changed, we'll see what was really true. And Jesus already said that the sins of men will be forgiven. You can reject me, but you can't reject the Spirit. Because if you reject the Holy Spirit, referred to, that's an eternal sin. And he just was talking about the devils who have already done it. So my point is, we're trying to do that again. We got Nimrod's knowledge. We got the knowledge that was on that tree. And it's being coveted by elite, powerful people who are trying to do what Nimrod was trying to do. Establish a new world order. I just heard the other day that about America, you know, the only thing that American people have in common is the government. That's what keeps us together. And to me, I'm thinking to myself, that's ill. The only thing mankind has in common worldwide is the primary spirit, is God. That's what we have in common. We don't have government in common. The government is trying to replace God. That's Babylon, man. That's the beast. That's civil authorities uniting with a religious belief system to control the world. That's what the beast is. The mark of the beast is another story. So that's what I get out of all this. That's what I get out of it all. I look in there and there is a heartfelt connection to a spirit. We all have it. If we start there, try to figure it out, stop shooting each other. We'll make our Creator happy. If it was a 2-year-old boy, he'd make his mom happy.
Who is Jesus Christ? He is the maker of heaven and earth. He is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. He is the Son of God. He is the God-man. He is our humble servant. He is the man of sorrows. He is the good shepherd. He is the Prince of Peace. He is the wonderful counselor. He is the Lion of the tribe of Judah. He is the dragon slayer. He is the sinless Savior. He is the resurrection and the life. He